All right, so today on Stories with Steve is the infamous story about the rap battle between Wallace and Barnes, where Wallace won, and the recording of this battle mysteriously disappears. All right, so to give you a little back history, there was always like some weird hate coming from Barnes towards Wallace. What's the origin of it? I don't know. I don't know if somebody smashed somebody's girl, whatever may have happened. I don't know. I really don't know. But there was always like some hate going on there. But at this point, it was kind of trivial, and we agreed to having like this rap battle, right? So we basically decided to do part on Barnes, part on Wallace, whatever. But it ended up mostly being on Wallace. So on my side, you know what I'm saying, you have the whole crew, and we're diverse, right? I'm Italian, P, Coffee, Ja, they're all either Black American, Jamaican, or both. Devious is Puerto Rican, you know what I mean? We're a diverse group of homies or whatever. And so on our side, we had a few people that were going to be battling, and then a few people that would just be showing support, spectators, so on and so forth. And the homie DC, who his rap name at the time was Dimes, um, basically kind of got drafted onto the Wallace team, right, to be one of our spitters. And on the opposite side, you had a weird cast of characters, right? So you had uh, one group of guy from Barnes that would wear stocking caps, do rags, wear hip hop, design clothing. Would listen to Tupac and the Outlaws all day. But if there was like more than a few black guys on a block or something, they would start acting peculiar and start, you know, acting strange, like they were short circuiting. So you had them, like some fake thugs slash I want to be hip hop, but you're a little bit racist, whatever, whatever. And then the other part of their team was kind of a group of another Hispanic guys, but they were more on the nerdy side, right? And to give their little background history, is their big homie was a super, super, super Wu Tang head, right? He loved everything about Wu Tang. He had every album that dropped, like from 36 Chambers to Cal to ODB's album to RZA to Jizza, everybody's album. He probably has everything now. All their side projects, So if the RZA to Jizza had a random cousin that had a mixtape out on Staten Island in Brooklyn, he had it, right? So he was full fledged being a Wu Tang head, and these group of young nerdier guys basically followed behind him as he was like their idol, right? So this dude became a 5%er. So because the Wu Tang was 5%ers for the most part. So then his merry band of uh, you know, wannabes or little homies or whatever you want to call it, they thought it was made sense for them to join it as well. But they were kind of, some of them were straddling the fence. They were kind of guys, they would see somebody at Pizza Corner eating a slice of pepperoni or a slice with bacon on it or sausage or something like that, and be complaining about the person eating swine. But then when they're alone at Abuela's house, they're eating a whole pork shoulder. Make that make sense, right? Anyways, so basically, these are the three groups that are participating in this battle. You got the Wallace crew, right? AKA Dub, and then you got the group of like wannabe thugs, love Tupac, but they're a little racist. And another group of guys who aren't racist, but they're nerdy and they want to be like their big homie who he wants to be like somebody from Wu Tang, right? So that's the groups of guys that are participating in this battle. So the battle goes down. The first one was they big homie, and he used a lot of big words, but like they weren't really like forming any points or storylines or getting at anybody or whatever. It just like he went through a dictionary and found the biggest words possible to pronounce, but like they weren't going anywhere. There was no storyline. There was no real bar for bar. It was just usages of big words. So he went against, one of the dudes on our side. One of our side guys beat him, right? Then next up, you had Devious. Now, Devious goes against one of their guys. It wasn't even a fair battle. Devious was the kind of dude that he'd be freestyling all day to the point where it might even get annoying. You know what I mean? He's freestyling all day. Like, he's looking around in the bag and, like, but unlike the other guy who's using big words, he would somehow make it all like connect, like the whatever he was talking about. And you could look around, use a deli and payphone and something else and put it all together. And it would sound all right. You know what I mean? But so Devious basically slaughters that guy. So next two dudes is DC and one of these guys from Barnes. Now the guy from Barnes was actually nice. So they're going bar for bar, hit for hit, blow for blow in this battle. But DC ended up winning, but everybody gave the other guy from Barnes his props because he was pretty nice. Now for the final round, right? The ultimate match, right? Is P versus one of these nerdy straddling the fence 5% of dudes. And this 5% of dude, like I said, you never seen him wear rags or nothing, like not try to portray any kind of thug stuff, because he was like on the nerdier side. He wasn't like the other guys who were like love Tupac, but they were a little racist. He was kind of more on the nerdy side. So you never see him wear rags or any kind of like, thuggish kind of clothing or anything. But he showed up with a rag on his head, which made everybody laugh. So when P started battling him, right, the guy went first, and like his big homie, like the guy that he idolized, he was using big words, but they weren't going anywhere. They weren't connecting. They weren't telling any storyline. They weren't really, getting at nobody. It was just, again, the usage of big words, but you're not giving any storyline. You're not giving anything. So he does that. So now it's up to P. And P killed him with two different lines. So the first line, P said, "Yo, bro, you wildin', dude. The only time you'll wear a rag is if Mark is outside with you." Now, Mark was a dude he idolized. It was a super Wu-Tang head, right? So dude looked hurt, like, oh, come on, man. Ooh, right? The crowd went, oh, right? Then P hit him with this. P was like, he goes, bro, you got to face the facts. No matter how many times you go to sleep after listening to Wu-Tang or whoever, you'll wake up, but you'll never be black. The whole crowd went, oh. Dude got upset. Looked at his rhyme book, because he was rhyming from a book. He wrote these lines down. P was going off the head and just hitting him where it hurt. This guy looked at his rhyme book with all his big words that didn't go together. Made an emotional face. Said, ah. Threw his book on the floor. Ran down the street. Whatever rag he was wearing fell off. So now we victorious, right? All our MCs won all the battles. We're victorious. We celebrate. We happy, whatever. So now we're gloating the next day. Now we have a radio blasting, playing the East Siders, right? I love it. That's blasting, right? So now we want to see the battle so we can rejoice in our victory, right? But we asked one of the guys from over there, hey, you think you could lend us the tape or whatever so we could dub us a copy and blah 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 blah? Oh yeah, I'll speak to so and so when I get it. Now we should have had somebody on our side recording in reality, but we didn't. And that's part of the issue. So we kept waiting, days go by. And what ended up happening is the tape mysteriously got destroyed, disappeared. Something happened to the camera, but they didn't want to, I guess, have it on record that Wallace defeated him in this battle. You know, I don't know if it's because when the guy threw the book on the floor, or it's because none of the MCs really landed. But that's the story about when Wallace, beat Barnes in a rap battle, and the tape mysteriously disappeared because they didn't want our victory to be, an eternity for prosperity. You know what I mean? Prosperity.